Hello. Whew. Today is W for window. So Clive Barker's A to Z's. W for window. Horror returns again and again to the torments of time, an unbearable present, an unpredictable future, an inescapable past. Every second of our lives, it pulls on us like gravity, claiming us for death. But it also promises something much worse, hope, the feeling that in time we may cheat the inevitable. When Edgar Allan Poe, 1809 to 49, died of drink and despair in Baltimore, there was little left of him but an old coat, some unpaid bills, and some of the most feverish, compelling, and horrific literature in the English language. His work has inspired movies, poetry, theater, painting, and the photographer Simon Marsden. In 1980, Marsden published his book of photographs, In Ruins, The Once Great Houses of Ireland. He followed it up with such volumes as The Haunted Realm, Ghosts, Witches, and Other Strange Tales, Phantom of the Isles, Further Tales from the Haunted Realm, The Journal of Ghost Hunter, and most recently, Visions of Poe. The photographer's family owned a large fishing fleet in Grimsby on England's east coast. Along with his elder brother and sister, he spent his childhood living in two archaic houses, both of them reputed to be haunted. Both his father and brother were avid readers of ghost stories, and he acquired his family's library of books about the supernatural. From the time I first read Poe, says the old photographer, which was at 10 or 11 years old, I was immediately excited by his work. It was brought up in old crumbling mansions with vast parklands and overgrown graveyards, grinning gargoyles. All this imagery that I now photograph has always been with me. So Poe has somehow stuck with me as a fellow traveler. In the books I've done, traveling, photographing such Gothic mansions and graveyards, I've always kept him somewhere in my memory. The strange thing was that when I was asked to illustrate a book of Poe's works, I found that I had already had most of the pictures. I already had grotesque gargoyles and crumbling mansions and overgrown graveyards. I only really had to take maybe 4 or 5 more to complete the book. And it was at this point that I saw the affinity that was there. I identified with his tortured imagination, his romantic view of the world. My own particular way of dealing with these internal ghosts is to photograph such places and to make books out of them and to exhibit the photographs. I feel that perhaps I am exercising myself by doing this. I suppose I want other people to know just what it is that I am feeling and why I should be so alienated from this world. The asides. All we see or seem is but a dream within a dream, from A Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. I've been enchanted by Poe ever since I was forced to read him as a kid. His influence on the world of art was enormous. Vincent Price. To read Poe is to step onto another planet. There's no landscape like it. Clive Barker. We've got a picture of Simon Marsden and Edgar Allan Poe. Here's Marsden, and of course there's Poe. On his 21st birthday, Marsden's father, himself a keen amateur photographer, gave his son a camera. I instantly became hooked on photography, he admits. What intrigued me was the magic of time and light and the enigma of reality that these elements conjured up. The first roll of film that I shot was of cardboard cutouts of ghosts that I arranged in tableaux in the gardens. After a lengthy stay in America, he decided to return to the British Isles and subsequently embarked on an ambitious project, photographing haunted locations and ancient ruins. In the course of more than 20 years, he has photographed many thousands of old buildings. Using mostly infrared film, his pictures read the haunted houses, castles, chapels, and ruins of Britain and Ireland in an almost supernatural patina. In my photographs, it's like having a canvas, explains Marsden. Then, back in the darkroom, I begin to fantasize on the negative or on the print, and I make these houses even more fantastic, even more mysterious, even more frightening. I'm really getting my ghosts out of myself and putting them into the photographs. Through my photographs, I feel that the viewer will experience a feeling of the timelessness, and hopefully this might make them see that not everything is as it seems, so that our so-called reality is not really reality at all, and that life can be anything they want to make it. I now realize that I am obsessed by the search for the perfect ruin, always the one that is more fantastic than the next. I also know that I will never find it, but I must go on searching. It's there within me. These houses from me anyway are vast tombs. Man comes and goes. Ooh. But these houses remain. Perhaps the only peace I will ever have will be within one of these houses or within the tomb. And then the asides. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I had been passing alone on horseback through a singularly dreary tract of country, and at length found myself as the shades of the evening drew on within the view of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye windows, upon a few rank sedges, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul. From The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. These bizarre conceptions, so awkward in unskillful hands, become under Poe's spell living and convincing terrors to haunt our nights, and all because the author understood so perfectly the very mechanics and physiology of fear and strangeness, the essential details to emphasize, the precise incongruities and conceits to select as preliminaries or concomitants to horror. H.P. Lovecraft. And we've got a picture of Whitby Abbey taken by Simon Marsden. And then we have a full picture here, Allen Park by Simon Marsden. That's the name of this place, is Allen Park. Sorry, my puppy is being upset. Someone will calm her down soon. Author and critic Colin Wilson describes Simon Marsden as an explorer of the haunted realm of the human soul. His work is an attempt to capture a certain strangeness in the external world, which can make us suddenly aware of the strangeness of the world inside ourselves. At almost exactly the same time as I read Poe, Marsden recalls, I was sent to a monastic boarding school in Yorkshire, and I was distinctly remember I could always pass by Allerton Park, this dark, forbidding house in the distance with all its tall towers and its just air of mystery and doom. When I asked my father if he knew anything about the house, he would nonchalantly tell me it was a madhouse. As I looked at the gaunt building, so he would fire my imagination with all kinds of stories. It was with great excitement that I learned the history of Allerton, that it was indeed haunted and it had been exorcised. But the biggest chill of all was that the bodies of the ancestral family who had built the house and lived there for so long lay buried within the crypt beneath the chapel, and that the house had recently been sold on condition that the bodies would remain there forevermore. Edgar Allan Poe has been called the father of modern horror. He was born in Boston to parents who were itinerant actors, but the death of his mother and the desertion of his father resulted in Poe, age 3, being made the ward of a Virginia merchant who later disowned him. Expelled from the University of Virginia for not paying his gambling debts and dismissed from the West Point Military Academy for neglect of duty, Poe finally embarked on a literary career. He married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia Clam, in 1836, but she burst a blood vessel in 1842 and remained a virgin and invalid until her death from tuberculosis 5 years later. Poe suffered from bouts of depression and madness, and he attempted suicide in 1848. In September the following year, on his way to visit his new fiancée in Richmond, he vanished for 3 days and inexplicably turned up a delirious condition in Baltimore, where he died a few days later. Poe's work was his life, says Simon Marsden, and he never holds back anything from the reader. He lays bare his soul. Like Poe, I have been attracted to crumbling Gothic mansions and eerie graveyards. I suppose anywhere that one could say looked haunted. Haunted, of course, by the past. I personally believe that the past is so much better than the present or the future. Poe was perhaps looking to a past he'd never had. The present was certainly bleak. The future for him seemed bleak. So the past was the only place he could look, and this decaying imagery was representative in his life. Poe had a particularly miserable life. Every woman he ever loved, from his mother to the cousin he was madly in love with, all died tragically. He lived in poverty for most of his life. His work would never be recognized as he would have liked it to be, and this is, I think, why he revered death so much and made it into such a beautiful thing. The most striking thing about Poe's work is his fascination with death. Death was all around him, but he romanticized it. It was his fantasy. It was a release for him, but it was also a cry for help. I would say that Poe, in his own way, in his writing, was delving into his own darkest fears, his way of getting them out of his mind to put them on paper, and I suppose in my photographs, I'm doing very much so the same. Macabre death images are perhaps the most shocking images one can use, says Marsden, because death is something that will come to all of us. We have no escape, and yet we will have to survive before it happens. We put it to the back of our minds, but perhaps we should embrace it more as a beautiful thing, and this is something I think Poe did. For me, nobody makes death and decay more beautiful than Poe, and I suppose in the same sort of way, surrounded by these houses, I am somehow abandoning myself to death and the mystery and beauty of death. I'm going to go back and read all the asides. Shaking off from my spirit what must have been a dream, I scanned more narrowly the real aspect of the building. Its principal feature seemed to be that of an excessive antiquity. The discoloration of ages had been great. Minute fungi overspread the whole exterior, hanging in a fine tangled webwork from the eaves. Yet all this was apart from any extraordinary dilapidation. No portion of the masonry had fallen, and there appeared to be a wild inconsistency between its still perfect adaptation of parts and the crumbling condition of the individual stones. In this, there was much that reminded me of the specious totality of old woodwork, which had rotted for long years in some neglected vault, with no disturbance from the breath of the external air. From The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. One of the first books of fantastique fiction I purchased was Poe's Tales of Mystery and Imagination in a paperback edition with a lurid cover. It cost, if my memory serves, $2.60. I was 10 or so when this seemed a fortune, but then treasure houses are seldom cheap, and I thought, my God, there are adults out there who have the same kind of dreams that I have. This is marvelous. Clive Barker. I purchased and put in some repair an abbey, which I shall not name, in one of the wildest and least frequented portions of fair England. The gloomy and dreary grandeur of the building and most savage aspect of the domain, the many melancholy and time-honored memories connected with both, had much in unison with the feelings of utter abandonment which had driven me into that remote and unsocial region of the country. From Ligeia by Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe is the master of us all and blazed the trail which has been followed by many writers since. Tales of mystery and imagination have never been equaled in the field of weird and gruesome fiction. He was in many ways the greatest writer that America has ever produced. Dennis Wheatley. And then we've got a picture of Weird Tales and a frost piece from The Raven. Invention, creation, imagination, originality, a trait which, in the literature of fiction, is positively worth all the rest. But the nature of the originality, so far as regards its manifestation in letters, is but imperfectly understood. The inventive or original mind as frequently displays itself in novelty of tone as in novelty of matter. Edgar Allan Poe. And above, funerary statue. And then there's a list of selected works. And that is W. Or window. And for anyone who's not aware, Doug Bradley has been doing a bunch of readings on his YouTube channel. So I'll probably just go ahead and grab his reading of The Raven, which was pretty amazing. Of course, it's Doug Bradley. And put it in the suggested videos box. Next week is X for exploitation. Of exploitation. So thank you for reading with me, and I will see you next week. Bye.